Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6. Chapter 2. Yeah. This is the deliverance of Ajamil. So, where are we here? This is translated by and with commentaries by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Yeah, so Ajamil has had his life extended. He was scheduled to leave his body, to die, leave his body, and be taken to the court of Yamaraj and to be held accountable for all his transgressions. But the servants of Lord Vishnu came directly from Vaikuntha and intervened because Ajamil had taken shelter of the holy name of the Lord, Narayana, even though he'd done it unknowingly. It's called Agyata Sukriti. The holy name is potent whether one understands it or not. Like fire, it burns. Whether one understands fire burns or not, if they put their hand in it, they're going to get burnt. So similarly, Ajamil at the time of death called out for his small son, whom he had named Narayana after the Lord's holy name. And because the holy name is absolute and potent, he called out the holy name of the Lord at the time of death. So there's a bit more to his story, which makes it very, very interesting. But at this point, it makes it quite unique. At this point, Ajamil, having witnessed the interaction between the agents of Yamaraj, preparing to take him to the hellish planets for punishment, and the agents of the Lord, Vaikuntha, from the spiritual sky, Vaikuntha Loka, hearing their exchange, he became immediately a pure devotee right on the spot by the association of the Vishnu Dutas, the Vaishnavas who had come directly from Vaikuntha. So he also received, his life was also extended. And now he has a chance to perfect his devotional service. And he has gone to Hardwar. And he's taking shelter in a temple, in a Vishnu temple there. And he is taking up the process of bhakti, controlling his senses and fully applying his mind to the service of the Lord. So this is text 41. Ajamil fully engaged in devotional service, and thus he detached his mind from the process of sense gratification and became fully absorbed in thinking of the form of the Lord. This is the process. This is the yoga to engage in devotional service. It starts with hearing and chanting. And there are 9 processes: hearing and chanting, remembering, worshiping, serving the lotus feet, worshiping, making friends with, giving everything that one has in their possession for the service of the Lord, There are different processes of devotional service for engaging the body, mind, and the senses. And Jamil took it up, and he detached his mind from trying to enjoy sense gratification to engaging in the service of the Lord and thinking of the form of the Lord. Prabhupada's commentary. If one worships the deity in the temple, one's mind will naturally be absorbed in thought of the Lord and his form. There's no distinction between the form of the Lord and the Lord himself. Therefore, Bhakti Yoga is the most easy system of yoga. Yogis try to concentrate their minds upon the form of the Supersoul, Vishnu, within the heart. But the same objective is easily achieved when one's mind is absorbed in the deity worshipped in the temple. In every temple there is a transcendental form of the Lord, and one may easily think of this form. By seeing the Lord during arti or offering bhoga, by constantly thinking of the form of the deity, one becomes a first-class yogi. This is the best process of yoga, as confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhagavad Gita. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatanetaratmana shradhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga, is the highest of all. First-class yogi is he who controls his senses, detaches himself from material activities by always thinking of the form of the Lord. So this is a wonderful arrangement. Krishna's wonderful arrangement. He appears as Archavigraha, the deity in the temple. And under the direction and guidance of the pure devotee of the Lord, when he's served in that way under the pure devotee's guidance, then this becomes a very simple way to practice yoga, to serve the deity in the temple. It's so wonderful. It's all there. The senses are engaged, taking the prasadam, preparing the prasadam, and then offering the prasadam and taking the prasadam, seeing the form of the deity, singing and dancing before the deity. All the senses are engaged, and the mind is engaged. We have to string the flower garlands this way, and we have to put the spicing that way, and then go out on Sankirtan and chant Hare Krishna in the street for the deity, for the Lord in the temple. So it's very wonderful facility the Lord has made there, and to purify the senses and the mind. And then the form of the Lord is there. He's standing right there. He's the Lord of the temple. He's the Lord of the universe. But within the temple, it's very obvious. He's the Lord of the temple. Everything is for him, or them. Radha Krishna, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. So this is the wonderful mercy of the pure devotees. They make these arrangements so that people can get this mercy of purifying their senses by engaging in service and seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. Anyone, a child, anyone can get this mercy. So nice. Text 42. When his intelligence and mind were fixed upon the form of the Lord, the Brahmin Ajamil once again saw before him 4 celestial persons. He could understand that they were those that he had seen previously. He offered his obeisances by bowing down before them. They were his spiritual masters. They came and rescued him. That's what a spiritual master does, is he pulls and rescues the disciple, the conditioned soul who takes shelter, rescues them from their bewilderment in the material modes of nature and engages them in devotional service of the Lord. So now he followed their instructions or their direction, or by their mercy he was able to engage in devotional service. By their inspiration, they enlivened him to engage in devotionals. They renewed his faith and his determination. See, these Vaishnavas do this. They don't just give instructions. They enliven the disciple. They give them impetus, and it's enlivened. Faith is increased to engage in the path of devotional service. So this is so now he's done this. He's taken up this, and he has fixed his mind on the form of the Lord, purified his senses, and they've come back. Here they are. How excited Ajamil must be to see them again. Commentary continued. The Vishnudutas who had rescued Ajamil came before him again when his mind was firmly fixed upon the form of the Lord. The Vishnudutas had gone away for some time to give Ajamil a chance to become firmly fixed in meditation upon the Lord. Now that his devotion had matured, they returned to take him. Understanding that the same Vishnudutas had returned, Ajamil offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. So they came for him the first time, but he wasn't quite ready to go. So they gave him a little time to clean things up a little bit, and now they've come back. He was ready now. Huh? He offered his obeisances, bowing down before them. He's ready to go. He's ready to go. Hare Krishna. Text 43. Upon seeing the Vishnudutas, Ajamil gave up his material body at Hardwar on the bank of the Ganges. Yeah. He regained his original spiritual body, which was a body appropriate for an association of the Lord, for an associate of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. It's interesting that if the disciple of the Guru doesn't finish up, the spiritual master comes back for them. So we see this with the Ajamil. He wasn't ready. He needed to finish up, clean up some things. And so his spiritual masters left him. He did what he needed to do, and then they came back for him. So this is a theme that can be seen throughout the spiritual cultures. This is a theme for the Christians also. And it's interesting to look at the Seventh-day Adventist mood, in that there was some prediction in the 1800s that their spiritual master was going to be appearing at a certain time in a certain place. And quite a fervor was aroused amongst many of the followers of Lord Jesus. They were convinced. It appeared that the prophecy was genuine. It came from the scriptures. And so they were preparing and preparing. They were ready to go. And nothing happened. Many people lost their faith. It's hocus pocus. This is all nonsense. That happened. But others who had a different way of understanding this, saw it that the reason they didn't go at that time back home, back to Godhead, was because they weren't ready. So we have the Seventh-day Adventist communities who, this is their outlook, that yes, spiritual master is coming back for us, but we have to be ready. And so they're performing different types of purification. So it's a theme, and we see that theme here with Ajamil also, that his spiritual masters came and rescued him, but he wasn't quite ready to go at that time. So they left him so that he could finish up, do what he needed to do. And he did. And now they've come back for him, and he's gone back home, back to Godhead. So the relationship with the spiritual master is eternal. And when the disciples are ready, the Guru comes back for them. And they go back home, back to Godhead. So it's just like for Ajamil, it was an impetus. Having their mercy initially was a great impetus to do what he needed to do to get ready. So that's the theme. Do what we need to do to get ready. We get a taste. We get initiated, so to speak. Different ways to get initiated. Simply by hearing is a form of initiation. It's not always necessarily a formal ceremony. There are different levels and stages of initiation. Simply hearing the messages of Godhead is a type of initiation. So we get some mercy like that, coming from the pure source, and then we become enlivened to do what we need to do to get ready. So it can take a long time, or it doesn't have to take a long time, but whatever, just to keep making steady progress on the path. And once it's begun, whatever's done is never lost. So it's a good deal. Because we saw that with Ajamil also. He had made progress. Earlier in his life, he was born in a good family. He was actually described as having impeccable character as a Brahmin. And he was engaging in devotional practices. And he slipped. He slipped from the path. But then he took it up again. The devotees came for him. He had association with the pure devotees. He performed some agyata sukriti even in his covered over fallen state. He performed some agyata sukriti, and that made him eligible for the mercy of the Vaishnavas. And he took it. And then quickly he went back home after that. He prepared himself properly to go. After the little detour, and it's described, he had so much remorse. He felt so bad about his bad behavior. He spent most of his life in sin, cheating people, all kinds of stuff. All really degraded life after he had slipped. And he had great remorse about that. He felt bad, terrible. He felt absolutely terrible about that. And that's good, because that keeps heading in the right direction, and the tendency to slip back is kind of blocked by all that feeling so bad about things. It's good. Okay. Prabhupada's commentary. So the verse again, upon seeing Vishnudutas, Jamil gave up his material body at Hardwar on the bank of the Ganges. He regained his original spiritual body, which was a body appropriate for an associate of the Lord. Prabhupada's commentary. Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vedi tattvata chakvadehan punarjanma naiti mameti sarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. The result of perfection in Krishna consciousness is that after giving up one's material body, one is immediately transferred to the spiritual world in one's original spiritual body to become an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some devotees go to Vaikuntha Loka and others go to Goloka Vrindavan to become associates of Krishna. Some devotees go to Vaikuntha Loka, where the Lord is approached in opulence and reverence and great majesty, and his power and his magnificence is very visible. There's a lot, very deep respect and reverence for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's powerful. His power and his majesty is very much in the forefront. And others go to Goloka Vrindavan to become associates of Krishna. In Krishna's pastimes there, he manifests his majesty, and his power is not evident. It's more or less hidden. In there, he simply enjoys as the most wonderful person. He does amazing things, and he charms the hearts with very intimate, loving feelings and emotions. And he really relishes that. And the devotees there also relish that type of relationship with the personality of Godhead. So there's something for everyone. And Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And he's inviting living entities to come in. Be with him in these different ways. Text 44. Accompanied by the order carriers of Lord Vishnu, Jamil boarded an airplane made of gold. Passing through the airways, he went directly to the abode of Lord Vishnu, the husband of the goddess of fortune. So Jamil evidently went to the Vaikuntha planets. He didn't go to Goloka Vrindavan, but he went to the Vaikuntha planets to be with Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu form of the Lord there. Prabhupada's commentary. For many years, material scientists have tried to go to the moon, but they're still unable to go there. However, the spiritual airplanes from the spiritual planets can take one back home, back to Godhead, in a second. The speed of such a spiritual plane can only be imagined. That first sentence. For many years, material scientists have tried to go to the moon, but they're still unable to go there. Well, wait a minute. Didn't they put astronauts on the moon? What about that moon landing? Didn't they go there and come back with some rocks or something, dust or something? Actually, according to the Vedic scriptures, the structure of the universe is such that they really didn't go to the moon. It's not accessible in the way that they claim it is. The Vedic cosmology is challenges these statements by the scientists that they've put a rocket on the moon. So here Prabhupada just very boldly and bluntly says, for many years material scientists have tried to go to the moon, and even said they went to the moon, But here Prabhupada's saying they've tried to go to the moon. They didn't actually go to the moon, because he says they're still unable to go there. Even though they said they went there, Prabhupada says they're still unable to go there. And then he discusses about these other types of vehicles, not the ones that are glorified tin cans with firecrackers on the bottom. There are other types of space vehicles. Prabhupada's describing them here. However, spiritual airplanes from spiritual planets can take one back home, back to Godhead in a second. The speed of such a spiritual plane can only be imagined. Personally, I can't even imagine it, but spirit is finer than the mind, and everyone has experience of how swiftly the mind travels from one place to another. Therefore, one can imagine the swiftness of the spiritual form by comparing it to the speed of the mind. But here's that the spirit is even faster than the mind. In less than even a moment, a perfect devotee can return home back to Godhead immediately after giving up his material body. Text 45. Ajamya was a Brahmin who, because of bad association, had given up all Brahminical culture and religious principles. Becoming most fallen, he stole, drank, performed other abominable acts. He even kept a prostitute. Thus, he was destined to be carried away to hell by the order carriers of Yamaraj. But he was immediately rescued simply by a glimpse of the chanting of the holy name Narayana. Now, the types of energies that are being described here are beyond the mind's ability to comprehend. It's just the mind cannot comprehend. We can hear about it, but we really can't understand it with the mind. This is realized knowledge, but we can hear about it and know that it exists and accept, yes, this is true. But then there's the stage of actually realizing. And that is only available by experiencing it. But we can hear about it and try to prepare ourselves for realizing it. So here, that energy, these airplanes that the Vishnudutas arrived in, faster than the speed of mind. And they can appear in less than a moment. Take the pure devotee who becomes purified, who's qualified to go back home. In less than a moment, gone. Ajamil accomplished this by a glimpse of the chanting of the holy name. His holy name was like Agyata Sukriti, similar. There was another word for it in the verses, but similar. Unknowingly. He didn't chant with a purpose for somehow or other getting anything. He had just named his son Narayana. It wasn't like he had an agenda or something. So because of that purity, he had no hidden motives or anything. And it was very effective because of that. It's always effective, but it was very effective because of his helplessness and no agenda for committing sinful activity on the strength of chanting, or treating it like it was pious activities, which is offensive to the holy name, some pious activity. Text 46. Therefore, one who desires freedom from material bondage should adopt the process of chanting and glorifying the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, at whose feet all the holy places stand. One can derive the proper benefit from other methods such as pious atonement, speculative knowledge, meditation, mystic yoga, because even after following such methods, one takes to fruitive activities again, unable to control his mind, which is contaminated by the base qualities of nature, namely passion and ignorance. So the superior method is to take up the process of chanting and glorifying the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the Lord. It's not available through any other process, because one is unable to control his mind that way because of the contamination of the modes of nature, especially passion and ignorance. Mantra means to control the mind. The mind always wants to have something to do. It has to have something to do. It's always active. Even when we're sleeping, the mind is active. We may not remember everything that the mind was doing while we're sleeping, but the mind's always active. Dreams and thinking about this and thinking about that. This is the nature of the mind. Accepting this and rejecting that. So mantra means to control the mind, hearing and chanting the holy names of the Lord. And the mind is engaged, hearing. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And what does the mind do? It doesn't disappear. It isn't killed. It doesn't not exist. It engages in thinking about Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And the mind is happy. Because then the mind can ask the questions that it likes to ask. It likes to ask, what about this, what about that? Mind likes to do that. What about this, what about that? It likes to scrutinize and analyze and find things, find solutions to problems. So when the mind is fixed on Krishna, it can ask questions like, where is Krishna? What is Krishna doing? What makes Krishna happy? How can we serve Krishna? The mind can ask those questions. And there's a lot more other questions too, but that's the idea. Prabhupada's commentary. It has actually been seen that even after achieving so-called perfection, many karmis, jnanis, and yogis become attached to material activities again. Many so-called swamis and yogis give up material activities as false, jagan mithya. But after some time, they nevertheless resume material activities, opening hospitals and schools, or performing other activities for the benefit of the public. Sometimes they participate in politics, although still falsely declaring themselves sannyasis, members of the renounced order. The perfect conclusion, however, is that if one actually desires to get out of the material world, he must take to devotional service, which begins with Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. The Krishna consciousness movement has actually proved this. In the Western countries, many young boys who were addicted to drugs had many other bad habits which they could not give up. They abandoned all those propensities and very seriously engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord as soon as they joined the Krishna consciousness movement. In other words, this process is the perfect method of atonement for actions performed in Raja and Tama, passion and ignorance. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tadas Rajas Tamo Bhava Kamalobdasya Cha Ye Cheta Etair Annavidam Stitam Sattve Prasidati. As a result of Raja and Tama, one becomes increasingly lusty and greedy, but when one takes to the process of chanting and hearing, one comes to the platform of goodness and becomes happy. As he advances in devotional service, all his doubts are completely eradicated. Bijjate hridaya grantis chidyante sarvasamsaya. Thus, the knot of his desire for fruitive activities is cut to pieces. Yes. This chanting and hearing, especially. This is the problem with the impersonal philosophy, and it's very subtle also. We're persons, eternally persons, and Krishna is a person eternally. Because of the suffering that goes on in the material world for the living beings, there's a tendency to try to counteract the suffering by going to a place where there's nothing. And there appears to be some relief from the suffering. When there's nothing, there's no suffering either, but then there's nothing. There's like non-existence. So that is not that's not actually very attractive, to eternally go somewhere where there's nothing. It's like not existing. It's like spiritual suicide. Because we're persons eternally. And so, but this philosophy is there, and it can be very subtle. It can creep in. The way to defeat this, the way this is defeated, is by glorifying the personality of Godhead, becoming attached to his service, his personal features, his pastimes, his activities, his name, his form. They're all personal. And we find the shelter there. They're not material, but they are personal. And that is the actual shelter. So those that try to take shelter of the impersonal understanding, they escape the madness of the material energy by going into somewhere where there's nothing. Just kind of oneness. Just a spirit suspended. No activity, no feelings, no thinking, no nothing. But they can't stay there. You can't stay there. So, not going into spiritual activities for serving Krishna with spiritualized and purified mind, senses, and intelligence, then they come back to the material platform. and they try to do something good, either hospitals or schools, to improve the material condition, perhaps bring it up at least to the mode of goodness, to get some relief from the really violent modes of passion and ignorance, at least up into the mode of goodness. So it's back into pious activities, which then qualifies someone to go to the heavenly planets. But again, it doesn't get out of the jurisdiction of the three modes of material nature. The only thing that will do that is Krishna consciousness, practicing the bhakti yoga. That's where the real shelter is. When having gone to Krishna's abode, one never comes back. You don't come back. That's it. And Prabhupada's, the rest of the purport, he's demonstrating how powerful this is, that some of the most fallen people, when Prabhupada was actively traveling and preaching in the 70s, the young people that were coming to hear and take instruction had all kinds of material of bad habits, terrible habits, completely uncontrolled. They were all ajamials. And Prabhupada, the great Vaishnava, the great resident of Vaikuntha, came and gave everyone a taste of the spiritual world. And now seriously taken up the glorification of Lord Krishna and the work of propagating the Krishna consciousness movement and becoming purified themselves. This is the devotional process in this age. In Ajamil's time, the process was that he should go to a Vishnu temple. He went to Hardwar and performed penances and austerities. In this age, the process is chant Hare Krishna and serve the Krishna consciousness movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Sankirtan movement is the prescribed method for this age. Take part in the Sankirtan. Text 47 and 48. Because this very confidential historical narration has the potency to vanquish all sinful reactions, one who hears or describes it with faith and devotion is no longer doomed to hellish life, regardless of his having a material body, regardless of how sinful he may have been. Indeed, the Yamadutas, who carry out the orders of Yamaraj, do not approach him even to see him. After giving up his body, he returns home back to Godhead, where he is very respectfully received and worshipped. Hare Krishna, how can you lose? The instruction is hearing and chanting about the name, form, and pastimes of the Lord, but also hearing these histories and accounts of the great devotees of the Lord and how they achieved perfection. These things are potent. And so we've been listening and hearing. We've been doing the yagna. We've been hearing and chanting the history of Ajamil. And now we see here, Prabhupada reassures us that because this very confidential historical narration has the potency to vanquish all sinful reactions. So just by hearing this, reading it, hearing it, speaking it, with faith, one who hears or describes it with faith and devotion is no longer doomed to hellish life. That's us. We have to have faith in that, because this is what Prabhupada's telling us. Regardless of having a material body, which we do, and regardless of how sinful may have been, that's a long story. Indeed, the Yamadutas who carry out the orders of Yamaraj do not approach such a person, even to see them. And after giving up the body, they return home back to Godhead, where very respectfully received and worshipped. Okay. This is what happens when we hear and chant these things. And we have to hear that with faith and devotion, and we accept it. And that's good news. There's no reason to doubt it. That's why we're reading these things. This is the medicine. So, that was nice. Text 49. While suffering at the time of death, Jamil chanted the holy name of the Lord, and although the chanting was directed toward his son, he nevertheless returned home back to Godhead. Therefore, if one faithfully and inoffensively chants the holy name of the Lord, where's the doubt that he will return to Godhead? Was it just Ajamil and nobody else? No. This is anyone who. Commentary by Prabhupada. At the time of death, one is certainly bewildered because his bodily functions are in disorder. At that time, even one who throughout his life has practiced chanting the holy name of the Lord may not be able to chant the Hare Krishna mantra very distinctly. Nevertheless, such a person receives all the benefits of chanting the holy name. While the body is fit, therefore, why should we not chant the holy name of the Lord loudly and distinctly? If one does so, it's quite possible, even at the time of death, he will be properly able to chant the holy name of the Lord with love and faith. In conclusion, one who chants the holy name of the Lord constantly is guaranteed to return home back to Godhead without a doubt. Yeah, at the time of death, the mind starts to race, like the mind likes to do. What about this? What about that? Well, do this, and he's always trying to fix everything. But at the time of death, you can't fix it. It's not fixable. So the mind sometimes races over one's whole life trying to find the solution to this problem. So the mind may not be in order. Or it's very difficult to speak, that you can't breathe properly. There may be some pain, or a gurgling sound. Sometimes the voice fills up with mucus, the throat, the lungs. You don't know what condition the material body will be in. Maybe there'll be some paralysis. I mean, these things happen. It's just when leaving the body. So might not be able to chant nicely or even chant at all. But Prabhupada's reassuring here that one who throughout his life practiced chanting the holy name of the Lord, such a person, even if they're not able to do it nicely or properly, or perhaps not even at all at the time of death, because they have practiced throughout their whole life, they receive the benefits of chanting the holy name. So what to speak of while the body's in good working order? Should chant the Lord's name loudly and distinctly, as much as possible. Prabhupada says here, constantly. So, this is the medicine. Now there's a supplementary note to the chapter. In Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary to text 9 and 10 of this chapter, form a dialogue concerning how one can be free from all sinful reactions simply by chanting holy name of the Lord. Someone may say, it may be accepted that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one becomes freed from all reactions of sinful life. However, if one commits sinful acts in full consciousness, not only once, but many, many times, he is unable to free himself from the reactions of such sins, even after atoning for them for 12 years or more. How is it possible, then, that simply by once chanting the holy name of the Lord, one immediately becomes freed from the reactions of such sins? So here someone is presenting this argument that someone has a doubt that they were chanting their whole lifetime, and then they commit sinful activities in full consciousness, not just once, but many times, even though they're chanting, and is unable to free themselves from the reactions of these sins. Even if they atone, they can't get free. So they're saying, how is it possible that simply by once chanting the holy name of the Lord, one becomes freed from reactions of these sins? So someone's practicing, but they're not getting anywhere. And here we see someone just chanted once and they got out. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies by quoting verses 9 and 10 of the chapter. The chanting of the holy name of Lord Vishnu is the best process of atonement for a thief of gold or other valuables, for a drunkard, for one who betrays a friend or relative, for one who kills a Brahmin, for one who indulges in sex with the wife of his guru or another superior. It's also the best method of atonement for one who murders women, the king or his father, for one who slaughters cows, for all other sinful men. Simply by chanting the holy name of Lord Vishnu, such sinful persons may attract the attention of the Supreme Lord, who therefore considers, because this man has chanted my holy name, my duty is to give him protection. One may atone for sinful life, vanquish all sinful reactions by chanting the holy name, although this is not called atonement. Ordinary atonement may temporarily protect a sinful person, but it does not completely cleanse his heart of the deep-rooted desire to commit sinful acts. Therefore, atonement is not as powerful as the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. In the Shastras, it is said that if a person only once chants the holy name, completely surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord immediately considers him his ward and is always inclined to give him protection. This is confirmed by Sridhar Swami. Thus, when Ajamil was in great danger of being carried off by the order carriers of Yamaraj, the Lord immediately sent his personal order carriers to protect him. And because Ajamil was freed from all sinful reactions, the Vishnudutas spoke on his behalf. Ajamil had his son named Narayan, and because he loved the boy very much, he would call him again and again. Although he was calling for his son, the name itself was powerful because the name Narayana is not different from the Supreme Lord Narayana. When Ajamil named his son Narayana, all the reactions of his sinful life were neutralized, and he continued calling his son, and thus chanting the holy name of Narayana thousands of times. He was actually unconsciously advancing in Krishna consciousness. One may argue, since he was constantly chanting the name of Narayana, how is it possible for him to be associating with a prostitute and thinking of wine? By these sinful actions he was bringing suffering upon himself again and again, and therefore one may say that his ultimate chanting of Narayana was the cause of his being freed. However, his chanting would then have been a nama parad, namno balad yasya hi papabudhi. One who continues to act sinfully and tries to neutralize his sins by chanting the holy name of the Lord is a nama paradi, an offender to the holy name. In response, it may be said that Ajamil's chanting was inoffensive because he did not chant the name of Narayana with the purpose of counteracting his sins. He did not know he was addicted to sinful actions, nor did he know that his chanting of the name of Narayana was neutralizing them. Thus he did not commit a namaparad, and his repeated chanting of the holy name of Narayan while calling his son may be called pure chanting. Because of pure chanting, Ajamils unconsciously accumulated the results of bhakti. Indeed, even his first utterance of the holy name was sufficient to nullify all of the sinful reactions of his life. To cite a logical example, a fig tree does not immediately yield fruits, but in time the fruits are available. Similarly, Ajamil's devotional service grew little by little, and therefore, although he committed very sinful acts, the reactions did not affect him. In the Shastras it is said that if one chants the holy name of the Lord even once, the reactions of past, present, or future sinful life do not affect him. To give another example, if one extracts the poison fangs of a serpent, this saves the serpent's future victims from poisonous effects, even if the serpent bites repeatedly. Similarly, if a devotee chants the holy name even once inoffensively, this protects him eternally. He need only wait for the results of the chanting to mature in due course of time. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 6th canto, 2nd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Ajamil Delivered by the Vishnudutas.